Explain to me, what does her internship have to do with you staying up late?
It means that I have to wake up early, and I'm the one that makes breakfast and do all of that jazz. Like, yeah. I'm up when she's up.
You're the housewife.
Right? And yet, I'm also the one that pays the bills.
Yeah, Okay.
Like, you're the one who puts money in the envelope and sends it off, or?
She brings home the bacon.
And then I cook the bacon.
And fries it on the
like you're the income earner?
Yeah, she is a student.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, well, you're just like a loser husband then. He like makes the money, and you're like my dad. Like, he makes the money and does the housework, and
I hope your dad never listens to this show, because I might use this cold open.
Oh no, I fully expect you to use that whole thing as a cold open at some point.
All right, let's get into this. Let's do this shit. Oh my goodness. Welcome back to May We Geek Again, 100 podcast. This is episode 6, Remix. Hey everybody, this is Jennifer, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Joe and Shaheen. Hey guys, how you doing?
Hi.
hello.
Hey,
welcome to the remix edition of episode 6.
What's up,
Let's
guys?
just call it a do-over. Like, it's not a remix. Like,
Yeah,
we threw everything that we did before into a fucking fire.
It was a dumpster fire. So
we're like one of those writers on movies who like we keep writing and then like squish the paper and just throw it away.
Well, except this
and start over.
We didn't intentionally throw it away, although it's kind of a blessing in disguise. So for our listeners, we had massive technical issues when we recorded this episode originally 2 days ago. Shaheen's voice track didn't record for the first hour, and then Joe's voice track dropped out halfway through the second hour. And to be completely honest, we weren't having the best podcast to begin with. So it was...
There's a lot of crying. It was super uncomfortable.
It was a lot of crying, a lot of gay privilege being thrown around by Joe. It was a little embarrassing after a while.
I like to think of it as like gay swagger, but you know, whatevs.
Okay, sure. It's gay swagger. So
you guys have a completely different take on what was wrong with the other day's podcast.
Oh, well, do illuminate us.
Yeah, like, how do you not consider technical difficulties where half of the show was not recorded as, like
75% of the show wasn't recorded. Like, I got the little bit at the end where we were talking about very odd stuff, which is great for the cold open, but not so great for the actual podcast.
Yeah, what worked for you, Shaheen?
Or what didn't work?
Oh, I don't know. Can we just do this one?
Sure. Let's get into it then. So for our listeners, you can find us on social media on Twitter and Facebook at May We Geek Again. You can find me, Jen, on social media at CoolHandLuquette and DeclareShenanigans.com. I'd really appreciate if you folks would come to my Twitter handle and just call me a creepy middle-aged woman obsessed with a teen show, because that's always welcome abuse. It's fun. I also wanted to make mention that opening in about 2 weeks on August 15th, there's a charity called Cancer Gets Lost, run by Joe Garfine. We're not affiliated with her, but I did want to give that charity a shout out because I think some of our listeners might enjoy some of the items that she's going to have up for auction. A ton of stuff from the 100 signed items. And a lot of items from other genre shows. So go check that out. She's on Cancer Gets Lost is on Twitter, so you can go to Twitter, find that, and then get a link to that auction when it opens. I also wanted to mention that we gave a DVD of season 3 away this week, and the winner of that was Rachel, and that should be arriving at her place today. So congratulations, Rachel, and thanks to everybody who entered that little contest we had. Hopefully, when season 4 rolls around, there will be more giveaways that we can do. Really hoping to see some Funko Pop figurines of the 100. They did say they were going to produce them, but I just don't know the timeline on that. A week and a half ago, the San Diego Comic-Con 100 panel happened, and some cool stuff we found out there. I'm just going to do a little rundown of what we learned in case you're not in the know. Indra and Luna are returning, so yay. Rowan is now a season 4 regular. Super yay. Can deal with a few more of his abs. They mentioned that Clark is not going to be the commander, but there is going to be Nightblood scouts out looking for a new Nightblood. Lexa is not returning to season 4. And there was an alternate ending to season 3. It's as a lot of people suspected, and as we discussed in our very first podcast, Jasper did kill himself in the alternate ending, but it was deemed too dark for this show. Octavia is going to take a dark turn in season 4. As far as the timing of the show goes, things are going to pick up immediately after the events of season 3, so right back in the throne room. Marie, Eliza, and Lindsay really had very complimentary things to say about the strength of their female characters. The groups are going to split up with the oncoming apocalypse. It also seems like there's going to be a contingent of people that are going to be trying to furiously survive this oncoming apocalypse, and another group of people who just kind of want to party on down. And I could get with that. They were also a little bit cagey about Clark's romantic future. They're committed to her being a bisexual, but they seem to indicate that it's going to take some time to move on from Lexa. And of course, shippers everywhere overanalyzed every statement, every gesture, everything that happened. The sky is falling, so it was business as usual in Shipperland. My takeaway was that the whole panel was really very positive, and the season 4 hype is officially underway. The show started filming yesterday up in Vancouver. That we've got some behind-the-scenes shots of the production, so everything is going as planned, and we only have 6 more long months to wait to season 4. I also wanted to shout out to a couple folks on Reddit who are always really fun to talk with about what we discuss on these episodes. So folks like Capital Chick, Danny Fluff, Lena, Ocean, Bubs, and Damn Bones. We enjoy talking to you guys. Sorry if I missed anybody. There's plenty of people on Reddit that have great conversations. So join Reddit crew if you're not familiar with the subreddit. Come and talk about the show with everybody. So we are talking this episode about season 2, episodes 5 through 8. And those are Human Trials, written by Charlie Craig, Fog of War, written by Kira Schneider, Long into an Abyss by James Thorpe, and of course, Spacewalker by Bruce Miller. So guys, these were some really fun, well, I don't know if fun is the right word, but these were some great episodes. A lot of shit went down. Finn went crazy. Finn got killed. We met Lexa. There were power struggles. There were reunions between folks. So there was some really great stuff happening in these episodes. What did you guys think of this as a bunch?
As a bunch, it was. I thought it was pretty great. We got, like you said, we had a major character death, and we also met a new sort of somewhat major character. Jaha, came back and tried to start some shit, as Jaha does. I think it was just a great chunk of episodes.
I agree.
I have a sort of ambivalent attachment to this group of episodes.
Ambivalent attachment? What does that even mean, Shaheen?
I can't tell if I like them a lot or if they're really cheesy. So, are not every single scene, but there are always scenes in these episodes where I'm like, I don't know if this is really good or really cheesy.
Okay, follow up with an example.
Well, maybe we'll talk about that when we get to the scenes.
No, I want an example right now, goddammit. Don't leave me hanging. Don't leave folks hanging, Shaheen. Follow through.
All right, so for example, the scene with Keenan where she's outside and then she starts growing blisters. Or the one with Cage and Dante being outside. It's kind of cliche in some ways, and I don't know, kind of the way it's shot or whatever. It might be a little cheesy, but it's also kind of well done. Like, there are elements of it that I really like. So I don't know. I don't know if I like it or not.
Now we're just backpedaling. You're like, well, at first I hated it, but now that I think about it, it's
Well, he said
I kinda liked it.
ambivalent. So
Okay, so
Well, that's what I said from the beginning. Like, I can't tell if I really like him or I really hate him.
yeah, I mean, sometimes things are cliche, and sometimes the cinematography doesn't lend as much weight to a scene as perhaps it should have. But sometimes the cinematography is really well done. This is a show where I don't really notice the cinematography that much because to me it feels shot like a very standard TV show. I'm sure like Danny would probably take issue with that and point out several instances where the cinematography is really well done and it is unique in a certain way. I don't think I have an eye for that, to be honest with you. So that's why I'm like, oh, it kind of looks like every other show on TV.
Well, that's just one aspect of it, though.
Yeah,
and yeah. The whole idea of like, I don't know, like the Cage and Dante's relationship is in some ways really cool and interesting, and Dante's character, and the struggle that he has. But the scene where like, Cage is trying to like tempt him or whatever, that's just kind of, I don't know. And the dialogue, again, like I said, there are some good things about it, but then I don't know, there are also.
Yeah, I
I
agree
know.
with you. There are some scenes that are a bit kind of like you would expect something like that to happen.
Yeah.
So let's start talking about some key themes that were touched on in these episodes. Joe, one of the things that you wanted to talk about was the high stakes TV and the consequences that the show follows through on. So talk to us a little bit about that.
So like people would like talked about how, and I think we even talked about it, like how in season 1, like you kind of didn't really expect them to actually kill all the grounders, and then they did kill all the grounders, or like when Charlotte killed herself or when she killed Wells, like those were definitely sort of shocking and unexpected things to happen on a show, especially very early on, especially with Charlotte and Wells. That said, we didn't really know them, so like we hadn't really built up an attachment to them or anything like that. So for them to die sort of early on, it sort of set the stage for what the show was going to be, and that like people were going to die and they were going to kill kids. But like, it wasn't, I didn't really feel anything, like we hadn't spent enough time with them. But once they get to the point where, and to some degree Anya as well, like we'd seen Anya like quite a bit, and like it was sad when she died or whatever. But it wasn't, I think, until Clark killed Finn with her, with a knife in his gut, that I think like that was really one of the first sort of stages of very like high stakes TV, and that they were going to follow through with sort of the situation that the writers had created. There wasn't an 11th hour save, and in some ways that sets up how the rest of season 2 is going to go, where shit goes horribly wrong with the mountain, and we're like, come on, there's going to be a way out of this, and there's just not. And I like that. I think not enough shows do that. I think.
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you guys this then. Do these high stakes do these high stakes create a catch-22 for the show, especially in season 3, where death of major figures and violence against several of the characters just happened all the time? So when you raise the stakes this high, it feels like they had to keep following through and doubling down to keep.
I disagree. I think that the writers felt like they needed to do that, and so they did that. But I wouldn't agree and say that it was necessary to like, in order to like keep us engaged with the show. What makes the show interesting is sort of the moral gray areas that happen, and sort of the way that we can relate to one character's side, and then in the next week we'll be against that character because of a choice that they made or something like that. I think that the writers in season 3 sort of fell into the trap of thinking that they needed to be bigger and better each time, when that's not why we watch the show.
Yeah, and there's plenty of criticism leveled against the show and other shows that keep using death as a dramatic raising of stakes. that to the point where it becomes meaningless, that it no longer is as impactful anymore. I don't believe that. I don't become comfortable in watching people die and watching characters I really like die. I do understand, though, that criticism that was leveled. I think some shows use death to artificially raise stakes and to get people engaged. And I think they do it because they don't have any other narrative maneuvering to do it. Some shows just aren't as well written as The 100. And, people might take umbrage to that I'm overestimating the writing chops of the folks on The 100 and other shows are good. But that's just, I think that's just an interesting question to ask. I mean, did they fall into a trap of their own making? And I think to a certain extent that they did. And I hope in season 4 that they kind of, they back away from that, because the stakes are high. Like you said, Joe, they don't have to keep doubling down and ramping it up, because we get it, right? We get it.
I get it.
So Shaheen, did you, in your themes, what did you want to bring up and discuss?
I wrote down a few things that I thought were interesting. I like how there is back and forth in every scene, like where Dante's talking to Cage or to Dr. Singh, or different combinations of them, or Clark is talking to Abby, or when there are two people who are in position of decision making or leadership, there's always back and forth in the dialogue, and they always wonder what's the right thing to do, and there's disagreement. So I like that. Although you might think that there's some of those people are more obviously or harder to support morally than the others, but there's still, at least there's layering, and some parts get extreme, but there's different layers of morality and different opinions about what's right to do. And I like the whole theme of mercy, and whether it's mercy, whether it's weakness, all of that in Long Into an Abyss and Spacewalker. There was a lot of it seemed to revolve around how Finn dies and not whether he dies, and that was good to show that people care about that too. It's not just the number of people who die, but also how they die.
When you say Long Into the Abyss, are you talking about Finn still, or are you talking about anything to do with Lincoln?
Long Into an Abyss, that episode, right?
Yeah. Like, what is the mercy part of that?
I was talking about Finn and what to do with Finn and how he's going to be executed. What did you have in mind with respect to Lincoln?
Well, I guess I was thinking about when Nico was going to poison Lincoln in order to put him out of his misery. And that's when Clark recognized that you gonna place the Odin phrase as that means this person's about to die. So instead of watching Lincoln struggle as a Reaper and withdrawing from the drugs and eventually just dying from a heart attack or something like that.
It looked like it was some sort of a cardiac arrest or something miserable.
Yeah, so Nico showed mercy in that moment.
Yeah, there were cases of mercy killing, right? But I was talking mostly about
Finn.
How they were talking about, like, so now we have this person who inflicted 18 deaths, and to the Grounders, the just thing to do is to make him feel the pain of 18 deaths. To the Sky Crew, that's just
torture.
That's torture, and that's too violent or too vulgar or too
bloody. It's not as neat and tidy as shoving someone out of an airlock.
Yeah.
It's too gory and too the torture element of it is something that they feel like is unnecessary. No matter what this person has done, they don't deserve to experience this, right? That's kind of how closer to how we think about it, where nowadays many people are against the capital punishment at all, right? So no matter how many people you kill, the idea is that we're better than that then I'll go ahead and kill you. Like, your crime is that you killed someone, and then we go ahead and kill you. Anyway, and and where that line is, it's just interesting.
But don't you think, like, given the way that they've presented Grounders, that, like, it would have been weird if they hadn't sought Finn's death? And, like, in some ways, I remember watching it the very first time thinking that I was almost surprised by their restraint of, and even when Clark offers her own life instead of Finn's, Lexa doesn't accept it. It's his responsibility. Like, the fact that they weren't gonna take out or, try to go to war with all of Sky Crew as long as they could just take this one life. Like, it seems, I don't know, I found it full of almost restraint, and not politeness, but common sense in a way of, like, yes, they demand one life, and yes, you can argue that in itself is barbaric, but they only wanted the guilty party. They weren't going to blame an entire group of people for what one person did.
Yeah,
which they could have.
And I think probably if we had a different commander, that they would have. I think it's Lexa that is the person that probably shows the restraint that results in what happens, and that Sky Crew is spared of more casualties is probably due to, her being a visionary, as Kane calls her later on when he returns to Arcadia. Or Camp Jaha back in the day, before that guy went off the reservation. And they were like, fuck this. Let's have a renaming ceremony because that guy was crazy.
Right?
I think that we're supposed to think that most grounders were never happy with this arrangement. And they didn't feel like it was fair.
It was tenuous, Shaheen. You're right. It was very tenuous.
And it was even said explicitly that Indra, when, like, in the next episode, the one that we're going to watch for the next podcast, Lexa says, some people on my side thought that this wasn't enough. And I think it's implied that it was Indra. Or I guess Indra comes out and says that she doesn't think it was enough. So, yeah, and I think most, like, I don't know, the average grounder or whatever, the grounder in the village were probably not happy about this. But at the same time, I think that that's exactly why you say this, right? Because it's all a matter of where you draw the line of the baseline of what you expect of them, right? How much do you expect of them? And then if they exceed those expectations, then you feel like, oh, this is actually, feels like restraint. Because if you expect of these people that they just come and wipe you out, then this is, they're making a compromise, right? But if you expect of them to not even demand capital punishment, if you expect that level of mercy from them, then they're, you're conceding something to them. And that's how it feels to the two sides, as if they're meeting each other in the middle somewhere, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, neither side had any choice. Like neither side had any choice. Lexa couldn't relent, and Sky Crew didn't want to give up Finn. It was only Finn's action that brought a conclusion to that whole tension. Otherwise, shit would have gone sideways rather quickly. If Sky Crew and more so Clark and Bellamy and Raven and Murphy had their way and didn't give him up. So it's actually Finn that essentially saves the day and faces his punishment. What Sky Crew can't handle is the actual punishment itself, because Lincoln went into it. He described what would happen to Finn, and the biggest act of mercy was Clark killing him at the end of Spacewalker. So good on Clark, even though that wasn't exactly the easiest thing for her to do, and it set up another bit of conflict between Raven and Clark in the next episode.
I mean, but this isn't the first person Clark has killed, so
Yeah,
at least
no
she's got that going for it.
Yeah.
She's like, well, between this rib and that rib, it's all like butter.
Yeah, she's an old hand. She's an old hand at this stuff.
Oh, I gotta go kill another person. Whoop-de-doo.
Well,
put the kettle on.
You gotta clock in, kill another person, then clock out. Let's talk a little bit about world building moments. I think one of my favorite things is something that the series is it's kind of the backbone a little bit of the series, and that's the relationship between Abby and Clark. And it represents kind of the tenuous nature of love and connection in the show. Their small moments together just kind of like reinforce the need for human connection, the strength of love that holds groups together, whether they be blood bonds or found families like the delinquents. So in addition to Abby and Clark, there's a lot of instances of people reuniting in these episodes. And these are like kind of the uplifting moments I find in the episode, like when obviously when Clark and Abby reunites, because Clark thinks Abby's dead, and the Sky Crew thinks that Clark is a grounder because she's all covered in mud and crusty and shit. So that reconnection was great. The reconnection between Clark and Raven was great. The reconnection between Clark and Bellamy and Octavia. I mean, these are moments like we don't get them a lot, and I really appreciate when they happen. So kind of the world building that I'm talking about is how these relationships just keep stabilizing the folks that are in them and keep growing throughout the show.
Well, so I think that one thing is really like to that point is if you put yourself in the place of these characters, every time you part ways with someone, that person is dead until you see them again. If you see them again. You know what I mean? Like you can't trust that like if you today in modern times, if someone gets on a plane and like goes somewhere, or somebody just goes to the store, let's just say that somebody leaves the house to go run errands, you're pretty sure that they're going to come back. And granted, we do have modern technology that like lets you like check in on them and stuff, but A, they don't have this modern technology of your cell phone and your text and stuff, and B, like it's a fucking harsh world out there. Like Finn thought that the Grounders had Clark when it turns out an entire other group of people had Clark and could have killed her. Like it's this weird thing of people going from like living to dead and back to living again in what your relationship is to them, which I think in some ways makes it that much more powerful. And I think that was really, really well conveyed in the hug between Bellamy and Clark. Again, not getting into any shipping stuff. I'm talking about just like the bond between those two characters at that moment of, this person that they'd come to rely on in a leadership role and like who served a very important and powerful bond and function within each other's lives. Like for all either of them knew, like the other one was dead. Clark was sure that she had killed Bellamy, and like Bellamy was pretty sure, like Clark was gone. Like he was, we've seen how Bellamy does later on without Clark. It was a really, really strong, I think, moment. And I think that they played it very well.
Yeah, especially considering, their relationship didn't start off that great and they had many philosophical conflicts. But in the end, they do become the two people that rely on each other the most in the show. And yeah, that was a really, really great moment. And the show can go so dark so many times, and these relationships become strained throughout the whole arc of the series. And that's what, and I think a lot of fans really like the delinquents. They like the chemistry and the camaraderie between them. And when these relationships fracture, like Bellamy and Clark's did at the beginning of season 3, and then, of course, we've got Octavia and Bellamy in season 3, who knows if those two are ever going to come back together again. It hurts, because we've seen how strong these relationships are and how they need to be strong for each other to survive, not just living in the world, but finding love and hope and friendship and all that stuff. The whole thing, life needs to be more about just survival. And that's true. And these relationships bear that out beautifully, I think. I think another bit of world building that we need to get into, because it's obviously super important to the rest of season 2 and season 3, is the introduction of Lexa. So, Joe, you had a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would say, like, of course, like, on the one hand, like, you're like, this girl in this, prison cell or whatever, like, you want to think that, like, oh, maybe she's the commander or whatever. And then, like, of course, when it's revealed that she is, like, duh, of course, that why wouldn't this world also have sort of the corresponding piece to Clark, in that, like, both of these groups are led by, 2 young women.
Yeah.
And that's not a weird thing in this society. Granted, we still at this point don't know exactly how Lexa was chosen, but given sort of the brutality and no bullshitness of the Grounders, it's not that, she is, I don't know, the purest virgin on the mountain. You know what I mean? Like, it's not something flowery and poetic in terms of how she was chosen. Like, that somewhere, at least for me, like, you knew that, like, there was bloodshed involved, however it might have happened.
Yeah, it was
so
probably...
she's also a badass.
Yeah, so it was probably a horrible, way to choose, horrible, bloody way to choose commander, which is, like, heads and shoulders
As it
above
turns out it was.
but it's heads and shoulders above the U.S. electoral system at this point in time. We also, the other thing though that we don't know is if it's an inherited position either. I thought it was. I wasn't really struck by her age or gender very much. I guess the show kind of just like has
with that.
Well, I think the show has changed my perception of how genders and age are treated, which I think is a really good thing, because prior to this show, I wasn't really too cognizant of how females are portrayed in media, how men are portrayed in media, how people of color, how LGBT people are portrayed in media. And now I'm like, I feel like a very, I wouldn't say enlightened person, but I think I have a lot more data to consider when looking at entertainment. And the show makes me angry, because I look around the world now and I'm like, so why can't we have female Ghostbusters? Why are all the man babies crying? And why is CBS calling shit too female when they have like 6 male-led shows on their new slate? Like, the show has elevated my vision of these things. And that's because it just does it without trumpeting itself, or you can debate that as far as how they promoted themselves on social media. I hope that kind of addresses. We had a question on Twitter from Annabelle from I believe Paris, I think, about her age. So I didn't take notice of it. You felt it was kind of natural. Shaheen, did you have what was your reaction to seeing this girl suddenly go from this scared little waif trapped with Jaha and Kane and transformed into this commander?
Actually, the same feeling that I was talking about before. I don't know if I really like it or if it's really cliche, because I mean, in retrospect, the idea is an old idea, right? Of course, the big guy, the boss, doesn't, show himself or herself at first, and you think it's the butler, and then turns out, oh, the butler was the boss the whole time
in a subway.
So yeah,
oh my God, it was totally Lexa with the candlestick. We knew it.
Yeah.
Of course, with the candle.
Turns out the sidekick was the main guy the whole time or whatever. So it's that idea. And then, her being badass is like, she's being badass too, obviously. I don't know. But it's still cool. I don't know.
I mean, the badassery, though, is mainly, when we first meet her, it's physicality. And that's how the Grounders kind of communicate their strength. And then the second of badassery is when she's on her throne and she meets Clark for the first time, and she's got the war paint on. She's twirling her dagger and just trying to be as imposing as possible.
Yeah. First of all, I don't like that we consider that to be badass. Like, we say that like characters are badass as soon as they kill somebody or they start shooting a gun or something, and it always has to do with something. Has something to do with either violence or speed, maybe. Like if they drive fast or they can ride a horse, we say they're
Well, then
badass. I
what
don't
makes
know.
badass to you then? Like what would make somebody badass?
Brewing a proper cup of tea, probably.
Right? It takes
I would not say
patience.
badass.
It takes technique.
I don't know. I don't know what I would consider badass.
Well, I think a lot of this. I mean, we could have a deep discussion that a lot of this is rooted in kind of our cliche view of masculinity. But I don't want to go into that whole rabbit hole. But I see what you're saying. I mean, I think to me, she was more of a badass in the throne room scene or the throne scene. I know it's not the actual throne room in Polis because she was, verbally sparring with Clark, and Clark was giving as good as she was getting. When it came to, you're the girl that killed 300 of my men. And Clark's like, well, you're the girl that sent 300 of your men to kill me. So quid pro quo, bitch. But I think Lexa portrays badassery and how she moves through the world. And I think the acting has a lot to do with that. I mean, she can either fuck you or kill you with a look. Because she's got them eyes, dude.
But that's the funny thing, though, is that like at first when we met her,
let's get to that. Let's get to that because Joe and I have the same opinion about Lexa when we first met her.
It was almost like almost to your point, Shaheen, where it was just sort of like cheesy, like she was trying to be like this like cool, reserved badass or whatever. And it did feel like it was kind of one of those moments where I was like, is she a terrible actress? Like, is this just like... It was almost like watching Mulholland Drive with Naomi Watts, and you watch this whole movie and you're like, she is awful. And then by the end of it, you're like, oh my God, she's amazing. Thankfully, it didn't take till the very end of Lexa's story to get to the amazing part. Like, I think, we kind of get to that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how she is playing it so reserved. Until you see like sort of the mask of the commander fall away, or start to fall away around Clark. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, she's she has much more duality than Clark does, than most of the other characters that we see because she has to, given her position. It seems like Sky Crew, you can be a leader, but also still have your humanity and not have it be weakness. In fact, like your humanity can be seen as strength in sort of one of the lessons that Jaha tried to teach Kane, which was, you have to know when to enforce the rules and when not to. You have to know when to, be strong and flexible and when you need to like actually kind of really think about it, from a different perspective. And so I think it wasn't until we got to see those two sides of Lexa that, you were like, oh, she's actually really good.
Yeah. I mean, when I first saw her, not so much in the scene in the subway, but with Clark and some subsequent scenes with Clark and the rest of Sky Crew, I was like, oh man, they kind of missed on this actress because she's so wooden, and I just don't get what she's trying to do with her portrayal of this character. And the thing with season 2 was I feel like everybody had really ramped up their acting chops, except for Bob Morley, of course. And
because he was already at the top. Because he was already at the top.
Fuck you, Jen. You hate Bob Morley and you hate Bellamy. I say Bob has not really improved because he's always been super good. Like, I would contend that the guy that you see in season 3 acting his fucking ass off is the same guy in season 1 in like Day Trip on Next to the Tree acting his fucking ass off. Bob has always been consistently good. But some of the other actors, like Eliza, had to kind of grow into the role a little bit. Raven's given a little bit more emotional, more of an emotional journey in season 2, so we get to see more of her acting chops and her range.
Yeah, her character needed to grow.
Yeah, but so everyone's like hitting the accelerator, really coming into their own as actors, and then Alicia Debnam Carey, I'm like, dude, like she's just not that good. And then a couple episodes go on, and then you get to the Harambe episode where they're fighting the giant ape. Just feels so stupid to say that. And it's just like, yeah, okay, I get it now. I get it. I was wrong. She's really, really good.
Well, I guess I just binge watched the whole thing through. I didn't even realize there was I didn't feel there was any change in, she was always supposed to be this stoic leader, right? And she's actually, use that word stoic about a lot of people, but she's actually a classical stoic, because the stoic is a person who believes that if you achieve tranquility, if you just accept what's in store for you and get rid of all your attachments, the source of your misery and your suffering is your attachments. So if you don't have them, then you're peaceful.
So Lexa's the zenest motherfucker in the room.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, but I think I always liked her. I think other than the introduction that I was a little shaky about, I thought it was cool. She was cool.
Let's talk about Reapers.
Reapers.
All right.
Yeah, let's talk about Reapers, because I'm looking through the sheet and I was like, oh well, that's actually kind of fun.
Yeah, I like the making of a Reaper. We finally get to see where Reapers come from, and the process is interesting. I mean, I don't think that it's actually possible, but they're using.
The science is a little soft.
They're using
the
classical.
Science of the show is shaky at times. What?
But they're using a classical conditioning process to get them scared of those tone generators or whatever.
Yeah, the negative.
Those Men in Black mind erasers.
Yeah.
Oh God.
And then
yeah, that's what they are.
That's exactly what they.
That's
I kind of
what they
expected
look
them to pull out their shades, every time that they use them.
Have a talking pug.
Yeah, I mean, you'd extra watch the show if they had a talking pug.
Dude, so if Dante just walked out with a talking pug under his arm in season 2, you'd be like, fuck yeah, all in. I'm with this show 110%.
Get it? 110. Okay.
Oh. I didn't.
Swing and a miss.
And scene. I don't really like the Reapers, to be honest with you. I find the Reapers cheesy in the way that Shaheen finds some of these scenes cheesy. I understand that they serve a purpose in the plot and they're necessary, but they're inconsistent in their behavior, and I'm not quite certain I understand what they're capable of doing. When Lincoln is in the underground parking garage, which is a great scene, by the way, I love it. And then the creepy little toy playing Carol of the Bells, that was
creepy toys.
That was great. But
that's a good use of creepy music.
Yeah,
that was well done. I didn't think that was cheesy at all. As opposed to what they did in season 3 in Demons, I thought that was kind of cheesy.
No, I don't.
It's these things are very subtle. You either get it right or it just comes off.
There's
annoying.
always a razor's edge of you're either on the right side, the plausible side of things where you pull it off, or you're on the side of you kind of have to intellectually justify it to yourself.
Yeah.
But so in that scene, Lincoln was just this mindless cannibal, just attacking anything that moved. Mm-hmm. And then we're supposed to believe that the Reapers actually go out and they capture grounders and bring them back to the Mountain Men to either be processed for blood or turned into Reapers. So what are their cognitive abilities? Are there are there some Reapers in certain stages of evolution as a Reaper? I don't understand. Why would you let Lincoln out in the world? He serves absolutely no purpose if you're a Mountain Man, because he's just feral and eating people. He's not doing his job. Take him to HR.
Well, he was later. We see him later try to tie up this guy and take him to the mountain where Octavia
Yeah.
kind of beats it out of him. But yeah, I agree that we weren't given enough explanation as to what it's like to be a Reaper. Kind of a similar issue that I had with the City of Light in season
Yeah.
3, except I
Yeah.
guess I cared a lot more about the City of Light than the Reapers. But
You just want to know what it's like to eat people, Shaheen.
Well,
But,
I feel
like,
like
I we know you
ahead.
remember everything. For example, that was a good piece of information. Like that was not
Mhm.
that wasn't clear. I had the same question that Bellamy had to Lincoln. I guess this is from later episodes. But we know that. But what else do we know? Like we don't know much. I kind of justify it in my head with different stages of a drug. Like when you're super high, you just attack and you eat people. And then
if you're in Florida.
yeah,
I
and
mean,
then you kind of calm
hashtag
down.
Florida man.
Like like it's wearing off, and you're like, oh man, I gotta go get some more. And you're like, oh man, I gotta go kidnap somebody. So you sober up a little bit, and you go kidnap someone.
So that is the pawn shop visit. That is selling your
Yeah,
mom's TV
yeah,
at a pawn
you're like-
shop is to bring back someone that you find out in the woods. I
Yeah.
feel like they were just kind of like
You go
monster
banging
of
at
the
the Mount
weeks.
Wither like intake door, and you're like, just this one time. I'll bring 2 later. I'll bring 2 next time. They're like, no,
Can you
go bring
just spot
your.
me? And they're like itching. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
no man, there's price is a price, yo. Go bring
I
your
don't
guy,
do on credit.
a live guy, and you get a shot. So that's kind of how I thought about it.
Oh
Yeah,
my
they
God.
just they could have fleshed it out a bit more. Like it was fleshed it out.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I know, I'm on a roll today. They just kind of felt really like Monster of the Week-ish, even though it
Yeah.
obviously wasn't per week, but it was like you weren't really supposed to understand anything beyond this is bad. Lincoln was turned into one. That's bad. Hopefully he won't stay one. That's kind of like the extent of their like character arc.
I still found him a little cheesy. I mean, I didn't like the character design. I don't know. Maybe I was expecting like something a little bit more monstrous, but they served a purpose. I think they showed how far the Mountain Men were willing to go to get their blood bags.
I mean, I like how
horrifying.
the way they introduced the Reapers to us, and the way that it ended. What the image of what we had of a Reaper by the time the whole Reaper thing ended was very different from what we had at the beginning. So they all this is what they do on this show, right? They introduce you to a new group of people, and you always have a one-sided and inaccurate picture of who they are, and then you end up with more layers and more complexity. So I liked that aspect of it, but I feel like there were some low-key inconsistencies there. So
Yeah, I mean, they I think through Lincoln they did try to humanize the Reapers a little bit. So you're like at the end you're like, oh well, they're just trying to trade like people and their guitar and their record collection in for more drugs. I mean, they're not necessarily in control of what they're doing. Hey guys, this is Jen here with a brief intermission. We're going to be picking up the second half of the podcast in the middle of a conversation that we're having, where Shaheen wanted to cover something that we had spoken about in the first part of the podcast. So there was no real good way to transition from the end of the first half of the recording into this half, so I decided to record this intermission to make it less awkward. And now it's feeling really awkward. So enjoy the second part of the podcast, guys, and thanks for listening.
I was going to talk about how they take 2 characters and they take them to very different places, and then when they reunite, it's so awesome because it's so strange and like in so many ways, like Clark and Abby. The information that they have is so different. Like that, what Abby knows that Clark doesn't, and vice versa. And Clark even thinks Abby is not even alive, and it's just like all this information that they have, like mountain men, they don't even know what that is, and so it's just like all this difference of information, and then the way they feel about things is now so different from the last time they met. So it's kind of cool, and like Clark is still kind of pissed off about the whole Jake thing, and Abby doesn't even remember that, and it's just
Yeah.
Wait, I was married?
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. And same thing with Bellamy and Clark is like when they hug, it at the same time it makes perfect sense that these two people would have hugged at this point, but it's also so weird because of everything that happened to them.
They're not. Well, I feel like you can see that like reluctance in Bellamy. He's like,
Right, Bellamy is like, are we? So we're
Not a
doing this.
hugger.
I guess we're doing this.
no touching, no touching.
You're in my personal space. You're gonna muss up my hair.
Right?
Yeah.
But then he had to hug so that you could see like the bicep guns flexing. Like that was
Oh my
totally
God.
the reason. Like nobody hugs like
There's-
that, Bellamy.
I'm
Like,
sorry.
nobody.
There was so much forearm porn there. It's just,
So sinewy.
side note, there is actually a forearm porn subreddit on Reddit.
Is it forearms going into orifices or
No, it's forearms like showing the
Muscly?
muscly. Yes, it's not a bad thing. It's just one of those things that people appreciate.
No, justify
How
your
dare you,
fetish to
Joe.
me. Just,
How-
let it all out. Like, I mean, so like TLDR, Jen's into forearms and she goes on the porn subreddit for forearms. Like, let's just don't
It is
fucking mince
not-
words.
It is not.
I thought we were past this, Jen.
Okay, look,
I thought
have
we
never
were close.
I have never gone on the forearm porn subreddit. I've only heard about it in Lady Boners.
Is
I
this the
do go
official
lately.
recording, guys?
Fuck.
Yes,
Fucking
we are
story.
recording. This is included in the podcast. Fuck all y'all.
Okay.
So I will include the bit you just said about the Abby
I
Abby
want
Clark
to
relationship.
redo that. Can I redo that?
No, god damn it. We're moving on.
Well,
Redo it.
I wasn't officially talking about it. I was just answering Joe. She was saying, what were you going to say?
And you said what you were gonna say.
But I can do it better. I was
No, you
holding
can't.
back. I was...
I hope everyone's enjoying the how the sausage gets made part of the podcast.
Oh,
No,
man.
we got to move on. We do have to move on.
Okay.
Let's see, what do I want to talk about next? I want to talk about some of our favorite scenes because I think on our first go round with this podcast we didn't talk with this episode. We didn't really get to talk about that, and I think there were some good scenes that we all enjoyed. I really enjoyed the whole end of Spacewalker, from the part where all of Sky Crew is looking down, and then Clark decides that she's going to go talk to the commander, and then Raven's like, "Oh, here's an idiot with a little knife. Go out there, kill the commander, and we'll get you out. Things will go crazy for a minute or two, but we'll save you. Never mind
Right?
that you're
Like,
surrounded by the ground."
was
Like that was
Raven-
the worst plan ever.
Dude, was Raven Loki trying to kill Clark? Like,
I think
because
I
that
think-
was a suicide mission.
Yeah, no, that was Raven being desperate to do anything to. She would have done anything to save Finn at that point in time. But I love the whole confrontation between Clark and Indra, where Clark just leans into that spear. I'm like, that's a moment of badassery, Shaheen. So
Yeah.
mark that down. That's a
I
moment
guess.
of badassery.
You guess?
Oh my god.
It always
It's like
has to
pulling
do
teeth with this
with
guy.
violence. Like you have to walk into spears to be a badass.
No. This one was not violence. This one was like
Let me through. I'm going to see the commander whether you
this
want
one
me to or
is
not.
like she's
I am
willing
imposing
to
my
like
will. Yeah.
bleed. Like she's willing to like ignore her own pain to like make a point.
A point. Pun.
Oh God, I can't stop. I'm so sorry. I didn't even realize that one.
Oh my god. You're just full of them tonight. So, yeah, and then I actually think this is one of my favorite scenes from beginning to end of the whole series because Clark does her thing, talks to Lexa. They don't come to any sort of agreement. Clark's like, "Yeah, I'm going to go over and kill Finn now." And then the part of it that I love the most is Raven crying out. That punctuates the whole scene, especially when the camera is just either isolated on Clark or looking back up the hill towards Sky Crew, and you just hear Raven crying. It was just so emotional. Even though I didn't care for Finn that much as a character,
You felt bad for Raven and Clark.
I felt
like, that's
so
the
bad
emotion.
for Raven. I felt so bad for Clark. It was just such a very poignant scene, and it's probably one of my favorite in the whole fucking show. It was just so well done. So what about you guys as far as your favorite scenes?
I guess I should go because Joe's favorite scene was already discussed, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it already was discussed, Finn's death. I would just like to mention
Oh,
that
you were gonna...
once again, they fucking ripped off Buffy. Though I guess it wouldn't be again so much as this is, one of the times, and we will see more times, that these creators who have never seen the show before, like...
Well, Jason said that he hasn't, right? We don't know if, like, none of the other writers have come out and said we've never seen Buffy before.
I don't know how you live in a world without seeing Buffy. But anyway, Shaheen, some of your favorite scenes.
I like the zombie Lincoln scene.
where they like saved him, or when they were in the parking garage?
Both. I like both.
It was tense, like before they like shocked him into being alive again.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was a tense. Like you didn't know where that scene was going.
Right.
Like I wouldn't have been surprised if they had if Lincoln had died then, and then shit gets really bad.
Mm-hmm. And I like all the scenes at the dropship for that reason. They're so fucking tense because they're
in a little tin room.
It's like two sides that it's like just putting them in the same room in that closed space.
It's so
dangerous.
Claustrophobic.
And and then it's like there's also like matters of life and death happening, and it's like if this guy dies, everyone dies. It's just crazy. It's awesome. And they the way like Naiko comes in and nobody knows how to react, and everyone's like they just automatically pick up a gun because they don't know what to do, and then they're like, no, this guy is cool, and then he stays, and then Finn comes over and he's like, dude, you killed my grandpa or whatever. And so it's like it's just awesome. All those scenes are so freaking tense, man.
You killed Papa.
It's like, I'm not cool with this guy. You didn't say he was here. It's like, dude, you gotta be okay. You gotta be cool, okay?
Are your holiday family dinners super awkward, Shaheen? Like, it seems like you are like, you live for these bottleneck.
You have no idea,
kegs.
Joe. You have no idea. You have not been in that part of the planet.
What, the Middle East?
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. It's
Don't
like
plan
the
on
Middle
going.
East. This
Is it super tense?
Scenes at the
Are there
dropship are
readers?
like, why did you invite this guy over? And I'm gonna leave now, or I'm gonna start yelling at you, and
I don't see how that's different from any other family situation.
maybe not.
Where were we?
So
Scenes at the dropship are tense.
yeah. So let's move on because we are running out of time if we want to keep this to an hour and a half. So, Joe, you had mentioned we had in our original Lost episode, we had a conversation about responsibility, and I think moral responsibility for actions, and we went deep into that kind of like philosophical discussion. So, did you want to revisit that?
Yeah, sure. So, like again, like the Finn death scene, like the whole thing was actually probably one of my favorites of the whole series as well. And one part that I absolutely loved was Clark asking for mercy for Finn and saying, show them you're not a savage. And this was after she had like appealed, 10 other ways to Lexa, and Lexa was just not having it. And Lexa said, "We are what we are." And it was kind of an amazing, like, just slap in the face to Clark verbally. But I thought that it was also, it sort of calls back to this idea that they were exploring previously in other episodes and then continue to explore. And I feel like it is probably one of the biggest themes of this show, which is, are our actions, are they is everything that we do exactly who we are? Or like Bellamy said, who we are and who we need to be to survive are very different things, especially when you consider the use of the word survive, versus Lexa later on saying that, what you think our ways are harsh, but it's how we survive. I love that giant theme that the show sort of just weaves in and out of, like, almost every episode. I would say, like, almost every episode, somebody has to do something that makes them question who they are at their core. And it's the idea of, is this you or is this situational?
So what side of the argument do you fall on then, Joe?
Me?
I don't know if we ever got that answer in our lost episode.
I don't know.
I'm holding your feet to the fire.
Yeah, I wish I could. What was your John Locke quote, Shaheen?
Oh, the idea that if you don't remember having done something, that you're not responsible for it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
like I call bullshit on that one. that was a rabbit hole that we dove down deep.
I don't know. I think in some, again, like, as much of a cop as it is, I think situationally, we are capable of doing things that in any other situation we would say that that's not something that we would be able to do. But I guess if you can do it, then somewhere deep down, we are who we are. Like that is who you are. So I guess 60, 40, 70, 30, I like side with Lexa on this. But I think, to Bellamy's point of who we are and who we need to be to survive are very different things. I think what that sort of means is you can't beat yourself up over it if you have to do something shitty. If you absolutely have to do it awfully, tell yourself it's not you, because that's the only way you're going to be able to live with yourself.
Yeah, and I think you see certain characters, kind of taking up either side and then either taking it and running with it or finding that they move to the other side of that argument. I fall more on the Lexa side of things. I think, I don't like the idea that you can just kind of partition parts of yourself and say, oh, well, that wasn't me. That was an extreme example of me. I did what I had to do to survive. But I think it assuages guilt. I think if you're capable of it, it's part of who you are. Now, is it part of who you are on an everyday basis? No, probably not. Are you, if you're Clark, are you pulling levers every day to kill 300 people in Mount Weather? Probably not.
But she also is not presented with that option every single day, so we don't know. We can't answer that. She does. She pulls a lot of levers.
She has.
You give Clark a lever. I bet she gets itchy. Like, if you put a lever in front of her, like, she'll just fidget until, like, when you're not looking.
Are you gonna touch that lever? Because I'd like that lever. Are you gonna touch it? Can I have that lever? Yeah. No, I agree with you, and I think we see Clark's journey after everything that she's done in season 2. She does, I think, believe in Lexa's philosophy, because she can't live with herself, but she doesn't try to lock what she's done in a different part of herself and then just try to, go on as normal. I think Bellamy, to some extent, wavers between the two, and I think he uses, who we are, what we do to survive and who we are, two different things. I think he uses that sometimes to justify some of his actions. And I think by the end of season 3, he comes over to the other side and he understands that he's capable of some truly horrible things. I don't like. I view it as a cop-out, right? And I think it's a very natural cop-out. We don't want to admit to ourselves or to anyone else that we are capable of doing horrible things, but we are. So, for example, if you're a little shit dick on social media because you've got Twitter muscles and anonymity hiding behind a computer screen, you're probably a shit dick in life, but you just don't admit it to yourself. If you can treat people horribly because you are a faceless entity on social media, you're a piece of shit, okay? So take that, put that in your burrito and eat it, you little fuckers. I'm not angry or anything. But But
what do you mean by it? Sounds like you think that there's this essence that you have that you carry around with you, and that in that essence you have this other acts that you've done. Because I mean, if you're in a situation like it's a known fact that people are meaner to each other behind like on the internet than they are face to face. So now you can say that, well, how much of that is the situation? I mean, when they're when they're talking to each other face to face,
you bring up a very good point, Shaheen.
Right, and when they're talking to each other face to face and they're nice to each other, I don't know why it matters if we think that no, this is still the same person who contains the asshole side. It's just not coming out right now, as opposed to that was the person in that situation and that's how they behaved, and now they're in this situation and this is how they behave in this situation.
I have a counterpoint to that, though, Shaheen, is that there's less restraint when you're sitting by yourself in front of a computer screen than when you have to actually look somebody else in the eyes and face immediate consequences for what you say or do. And there's an inherent bravery to standing up to people face to face, and there's also an inherent cowardice of sitting behind a computer screen. We're all guilty of it. I'm not saying I'm fucking the best person on the face of the earth because I've never taken a swing at somebody online. I've taken many a swing at people online, especially when I was younger. And now as I grow up and grow into a middle-aged creepy old woman obsessed with a teen show on the CW.
Embrace it.
Embrace the hate. This is my supervillain origin story, by the way. Now that I grew up, and I'm like, you know what? If you can say that to me on Twitter, drive over to my house and say it to my face. Guarantee you, I do not have a gun, so I will not shoot you. Even though in Texas it is legal to shoot and kill your ass if you step on my property. But I'm just like, there are other mitigating circumstances, and you're totally correct, Shaheen, that circumstances change. But if you're capable of doing something when you are alone, then that is the lowest of who you are, right? Or if you're, it's still part of you. It doesn't represent the best part of you. It's not the face that you want to show to the world. Perhaps we all have some ugly bits of ourselves that we never want other people to see because we don't want to be judged for them. But you also have to embrace it, in my opinion, that this is who you are. And if you synthesize it, understand it, and reckon with it, then you can become a better human being.
So are you offering to give therapy now to grounders and Sky Crew? Is that what you're gonna sit them down with a pep talk and be like,
no,
listen.
or to your point, a couple episodes back, you can embrace the villain in you. Hootie, what's it? No. Homeboy from Outlander, Blackjack Randall. He is a great villain because he recognizes that he's a villain and he lives in his villainy. He doesn't try to put a face on, and he's not like, well, I want to take over the world. He's not like one of these horrible comic book villains that has really bad motivations. So you can live in your villainy if you want to. And there are certain people that are like, I give zero fucks. I'm just going to be an asshole. There's plenty of folks out there like that. But I think there's a majority of folks who are like, I want to be as good a person as I can be. And sometimes I fail. We all do. But I think you are the totality of who you are. I'm on Lexa's side on the philosophy of this. I think you can partition the bad parts of yourself within your being, but those are screen doors, right? Those aren't metal doors that you're shutting off the bad parts. Those are screen doors. At any moment in time, that shit can bust on through like a hurricane in Florida.
Another aspect of this that we talked about in the last episode is, I think you mentioned this example of you do something when you're drunk, right?
Yeah.
And you in your philosophy, Jen, you want to say that when you do something like you get drunk and you get into a bar fight or whatever, that that's part of who you are, right?
Yes. Because alcohol suppresses. So it takes away your inhibitions. So if you are an asshole, the thing that stops you from being an asshole 24/7 is eaten away by that alcohol. So
Okay.
if you've ever been around an angry or a violent drunk, I would caution
That's who they are?
you. Yeah, I would caution that person has a proclivity to being an asshole, to being angry and violent, regardless. And
Okay.
one day without alcohol, that shit could break through.
Here's my
Where-
question,
I
though.
of course am I'm a happy drunk, and I'd be happy if I could drink alcohol again someday in the future.
Wait, so what's your next question, Cheyenne? And also, where do you fall
Yeah.
on this? Like, where do you fall on the Lexa Finn scale? Bellamy scale? I don't know.
Yeah, the Lexa Bellamy scale of morality. You need to write a paper on this, dude. This is your doctorate right here.
My question was going to be, isn't there a line, though, somewhere, even though it may not be a sharp line, but there has to be a line somewhere where you can say that this person was in such an altered state of mind that they're not responsible for anything they did under those circumstances, right? And people do plead insanity or momentary breakdown or whatever they call it in the court, right? And they do get,
Yeah.
sometimes they get off or they get lowered punishment, reduced
So-
punishment. Do
so
you think that
historic-
that's something that's a fair practice, or do you think it doesn't matter even if you're on, if you can do something under the influence of alcohol, that's still you, and if you can do something on PCP, that's still you,
Yeah.
and if you have like Ali has access to your full synaptic network, that's
Yeah.
still you, right?
I think
Or
that's
is there
I
a
think
line
that's a completely
somewhere?
unique case.
You know?
I think historically it's been very difficult to plead insanity successfully, because the standards of the courts is just really high in those cases. There are people who are really mentally disturbed, and do not know the difference between right and wrong. I think each situation is very unique. Like you could argue that somebody who gets blackout drunk and rapes another person, you could make the argument then, if I'm following your line, that they're not responsible for that. And I don't think that is an acceptable thing in our society to say, oh, well, you're off the hook because you were in such an altered state that you were no longer culpable for your actions.
Well, and it opens up the door to that's self-reporting. That's saying I couldn't remember anything, which I have to trust you that's
Yeah.
the truth, and that's obviously not fair to your hypothetical
but let's
victim
put
in
that
this case.
aside. We're not talking about like actually discovering if this is true or not. But suppose that someone was, I'm just asking you, is there a line? So you're saying there is no line. So
No, I think, okay,
It-
so Shaheen, I think there is a line. If we use Allie as an example, so Allie
That's
takes...
the line.
Well, I mean, to keep it within the show universe,
what if you have schizophrenia and you're having an
Yeah.
episode?
so that's
Like
another thing.
there
is
has
like,
to be surely there has to be something. This is when they say when the philosopher says surely, that means they have no argument.
Don't call me Shirley. No, I think you have.
But
I think
surely
you
there
have a
has
very
to
good
be
point.
some line. I mean, not some sci-fi situation, but
Yeah.
a situation that we could imagine in our world, where you would
see your
agree
point.
to say that this person was out of their mind and they're not responsible for what they did.
So,
Right. I think that's a very, very thin space to occupy, because if we're
Yeah,
to be,
it's such
if we're
an
to take
outlier.
it, if we're to take it back to the show, for example, with Finn, we're to believe that he was under duress, that he was out of his mind with like losing Clark and trying to find her and all that. Yes, but at the same time, he even had Murphy being like, dude, this is not a fucking good idea. Like, yes, he felt like he had no other choice, and he got swept up in sort of these big emotions, and, the situation spiraled out of control. But
that to me, that's different from what Shaheen is saying. Like his example was schizophrenia. There
right,
was
totally different.
To me, there was no obvious mental break there, like a
Does it
severe
have to be
mental break.
obvious to you? That's the whole question. This is what B.F. Skinner says, the American psychologist, says that there is actually, you're never responsible for anything that you do, because there is no such thing as responsibility, because everything that you do is simply the product of processes in your brain.
So it's all chemical, and we can't be held
happen
responsible
according
for
to
it.
the laws of nature. What we call responsibility is simply when you don't see the direct cause of a person's behavior. It's not conspicuous to you. It's not obvious to you. That's when you assign responsibility. So if I do something while somebody is holding a gun to my head, then you tend to not hold me responsible, because you see the cause of my behavior. Now, if it's not a gun, if it's just like my mentor or whatever, standing, looking over my shoulder and breathing down my neck, then you would say, well, you maybe have less responsibility because someone is observing you. Now, when there's nobody there, but your brain makes you do things, we don't see the cause of the behavior, because the person's already been psychologically prepared to do that action without anyone observing them. Then we tend to hold them responsible. We have this idea of responsibility that we assign to them. So now you're saying that, because you were saying schizophrenia is something that's obvious, whereas if you have some kind of post-traumatic breakdown, that's not, because you can't see the cause of it. I'm not even sure. I mean, I'm not sure how you can see schizophrenia either.
Well,
but
I think so. I guess the person who is reporting on their experience, we would have to trust them. So if somebody who's schizophrenic is having an episode or hearing voices and they report that that's what's happening, we would. If all things are equal and that is their experience and it's a true statement, then that's what's happening. Somebody who is having maybe a PTSD type of break, they might not be aware that they're having an episode. So it's so circumstantial and it's so nuanced as far as what somebody's experiencing in the moment, that I think it's so hard to draw specific lines. I think you can draw dotted lines or maybe wavy lines or something, but I still think that a lot of these examples that we're coming up with are outliers. Obviously, the Finn example, if he's like having a PTSD break, that's not an outlier. That happened in the show, and that happens in real life, unfortunately, far too much. But like schizophrenia, we haven't seen. I think there are indicators that would show outside people that this person is having an issue. With Finn, he went momentarily, crazy is the wrong term to use, but he momentarily had a breakdown in his moral center or whatever that allowed him to kill people. Maybe he panicked. Maybe he thought these people were going to scatter and become a threat. So I think this is a really complex discussion, because I don't think there are any hard and fast rules. And that's why folks like you, Shaheen, you study philosophy, because there's still not answers to a lot of these questions.
That's how we make money, man.
Yeah, because when I think of philosophy majors,
we get you confused about these things, and then we talk
and
about
then you
them.
Steal your wallet.
We make them pay us.
Yeah, exactly.
To talk about them.
Because when I think of philosophy majors, I just think rolling in the cash.
Yep.
Yeah.
All the money.
At Starbucks when you get your tips.
Mad stacks of cheddar.
And I say this as a literature major way back in the day. So, I think this is a really interesting discussion. I think we'll
come back to it. We'll come back to it throughout in other episodes as it comes up, because that's the thing that I like about it.
Other podcast episodes. And sometime in the future, we for listeners, we do plan on doing a theme episode where we kind of do some deep diving into some of this stuff, because there's a lot of complex things to talk about in the show. But we need to start wrapping up, because we're getting a little bit long. I guess you guys want to do some well actuallys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Go ahead, Shaheen.
I had one, which is this is one of the scenes that I really don't like, because this is the scene where Dr. Singh, who, by the way, should be, her name is spelled, it looks like a Chinese name. It should be Singh as in Singh.
Yeah, Indian.
She's Indian. I don't know. Whatever. She messes up when she's talking to Monty, and she says Maya was heavily sedated, so Jasper's gonna feel that too. It's very normal. It's perfectly normal. And then Monty is like, if you've never done this before, how do you know? And it's like, duh, fact of chemistry, like sedatives were dissolved in Maya's blood, and that blood is now in Jasper's body. I mean, how that they don't have to have done this before. This is a stupid question.
But
And
they did.
She should
But
have
they
been
did
like,
do it.
what kind of question is that? Like, you ever,
Just
like,
backhand
you know
Monty.
anything about
Yeah,
anything?
backhand him. I'm a doctor, bitch.
Like, yeah. But she's like, she gets all nervous and she's like, you're right. I should have said it's to be expected. And I'm like, man, like,
She's
that's
been
the
found
best
out
the
by
writers could
Monty.
do. Like, I can imagine the writer's room. And they're like, so guys, we need some science thing for this. We want her to mess up, and
But not
you
too
know,
much.
not too much though. And they're like, what about like maybe Jasper feels sedated? And they're like, yeah, that's good enough. Just put it in there. Just don't think about it for 2 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one. My well actually is when Clark gets back to Camp Jaha after her fight, her knockdown, drag out fight with Anya. She looks like she's been fed face first into a wood chipper, yet she never develops any facial scars, even though she has obvious stitches in a couple places. I'm like, I get it because she's the pretty blonde lead of the show, but still, could we have like one token scar? That would be kind of cool.
Or maybe just like an eye patch. Like maybe she loses an eye in season 4 and we've got like an eye patch in season 5. Like high stakes TV.
This show is actually praised for how long the scars and the wounds and stuff last.
Except then.
Dude, these guys are like never clean, never without some sort of blood somewhere. I mean, I
Rampant
gotta,
infection.
yeah, I mean, I give these actors credit for being so dirty all the time. But yeah, they take it to new levels, especially in season 3. And then, Joe, your well actually is...
So Kane planting the little bonsai tree, that tree would die. Like, in a fucking instant. Like, you can't just be like, hey, like, I am a terrible... Like, I have 2 tiny basil plants that I have not managed to kill. Every other plant I have touched, and this is only within the last, like, 3 weeks, every other plant I have touched is dead, died, withering, whatever. So if I know that plant is going to die, that plant is going to die of root shock, you know, it's bad news, Kane. And but then again, maybe it was a metaphor for Sky Crew trying to put roots on Earth. You know, you can't just jump on in there and expect everything to be cool. Like, you know, you gotta ease into it.
And
Yeah, and I
speaking of that, he planted it in some random place on the way to Polis or whatever, and it's like,
You couldn't find a picturesque hilltop? Damn, Kane. Like,
couldn't find a better place. That's like the memory of your mom. He just planted it, you know, in some random places. Not
Threw
even
it in a
going to be able
ditch.
to find it ever again. Yeah.
It actually, when they cut away, the 2-headed deer ate it, and then that was that.
Okay. So, on our next episode, episode 7, we're going to be covering episodes 9 through 12 of season 2. So, guys, get your rewatches in on that one. Let's talk about some TV shows to recommend. Shaheen, are you watching anything? And the answer will be no.
Yes, no. Nothing to recommend.
Oh, Shaheen, you got to start watching something. I don't care if it's like heart to
I gotta
heart.
stop watching Tomb Raider level editors, man.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Now
Nerd
that
alert.
nerd alert. I don't have room to talk. I'm watching
No,
I'm watching
you
people play
don't forearm
Hearthstone.
porn.
Still the best game ever.
Okay.
Just putting it out there.
How old is the game?
First one came out in 96, I think.
Oh my gosh.
Somewhere around there. 98.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how good video games are now. Shaheen,
Nope.
if you ever. Nope.
I disagree.
Shaheen loves those polygon boobs. Like, you can't.
Those sharp ass polygon Lara Croft boobs.
Yes. Yes.
All right, so Joe, what are you watching on the TVs?
Just we kind of took a break from Outlander just because like the first season was like, yay, it's pretty and people are pretty and having fun and doing it because it's Cinemax, and then all of a sudden it got really dark, so we're taking a little break and we're still making our way through Parks and Rec. We'll get back to Outlander, and we also still want to obviously watch Stranger Things because everyone is like losing their minds over it.
Yeah, so that's one of my recommendations. Stranger Things on Netflix is the new hotness. It one of the leads, whose name is Finn Wolfhard. I mean, what a great name! He's actually a little kid. He's the kid that plays Zoran in The 100. So the disfigured kid out in the desert. So
John has best friend.
Yeah, so if you are a child of the 80s and love Spielberg and Stephen King and John Carpenter and stuff like that, and you like great casts, Stranger Things is the new hotness. Definitely recommend it. Also, still watching Killjoys on Sci-Fi. There's a couple new shows coming up on Sci-Fi in the fall that I'm really looking forward to. Of course, I can't remember what any of them. Oh, there's Van Helsing with a female lead, and then there's one called, I think it's like Incorporated or The Corporation or something like that. It's got like Julia Ormond in it, and it's like produced by Ben Affleck and what's his name?
Matt Damon.
Wait, so
really?
Excited! Yeah, their production.
Oh my god,
company.
that was just me joking and doing the Team America Matt Damon voice, but
Nope.
okay.
Nope. They're
Actual thing.
I believe it's their production company. I don't think they're like actively involved in the show, but there's some cool stuff, and I appreciate the folks who are like watching 12 Monkeys, who listen to the show and they listen to the podcast, and they're watching like 12 Monkeys and they're getting into Killjoys, and they're like, am I right about good TV, guys, or am I right? I'm not going to steer you guys wrong. I'm not going to be like, y'all really need to be watching The Real Housewives of New York because Bethany Frankel is just off the chain. I mean, granted, she is off the chain, but I will steer you guys.
But that's your
to the
private
good stuff.
shame. That is
my private shame. That is like the bad part of me that loves trash TV.
But it is a part of you. You can't say it's situational. You can't say, "Oh, well, it was on, so I really, that's what happened." No, it's you. We are what we are, Jen.
We are what we are, and I watch trash TV like it is going out of fucking style. I love it.
And yet it never does. It just gets more.
It never does.
And more.
Oh God. So again, guys, as we watch new good things on TV, we'll try to tip you off about it so you too can enjoy good things on TV.
Or give us recommendations. Tweet at us. Maybe we haven't seen something.
I doubt it because I watch everything. The next thing I'm going to get into is the season 3 and 4 of what's that Australian prison show?
I don't know. It sounds sexy though. Wow.
With the women.
It just sounded even sexier. I was talking before you even said the words "the women's." So
yeah, there's some gay shit happening there. So again, the gay privilege all over the place,
everywhere,
ruining society.
I mean, it puts white male privilege to shame.
It certainly does. So let's wrap this up, guys. Thanks everyone for listening. Reminder to follow us on the Twitters at May We Geek Again, also on the Facebook. Guys, had a great time talking about these episodes with you. May we geek again.
Take it easy, guys.